We thank you. We thank you for being with us every day. Hey, hey. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you for being with us in every way. God of the poor, help us to rescue the lost and forgotten of this earth. So precious in your eyes, oh yeah. Bring healing to our lives and we'll protect the world from all this confusion. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the earth. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you for being with us every day. Hey, hey. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you for being with us in every way. Teach us, oh God, to discover the worth of each and everything, to be filled with awe and contemplation. Oh yeah, to see we are united.
Dear brothers and sisters, dear friends joining us online, and those in Glasgow for the COP26, Pax et Bonum, Pace Bene, Buenos Dias. For those speaking Spanish, you can also select Spanish language in the interpreters on your screen down there. You can find it. Good afternoon, good morning, those far away from Australia and wherever you are joining from. And very happy All Saints Day. Today is a great day for all of us. Indeed, we are so delighted as Franciscans that you are joining us from all over the world in this hybrid meeting and webinar, courtesy of the Franciscans International, the OFM Justice and Peace, and the Inter-Franciscan Justice, Peace and Integrity of Creation, Roman 6, and in collaboration with the Laudato Si movement, and even with the Friars Minor in Glasgow. Thank you and welcome, especially our Franciscan experts in Glasgow and other panelists, Franciscans from the grassroots, including Australia, the Philippines, Kenya, the USA, and other places. As I said, for Spanish speakers, remember to select the Spanish translation at the bottom of the screen. The mission of the Franciscans International is to advance at the United Nations for the protection of human dignity and environmental justice using a rights-based approach, focusing on the rights of those who are already vulnerable and marginalized due to poverty and discrimination. The FI uses, as I said, the human rights-based approach to climate change as a tool to complement international efforts aimed at tackling the adverse effects of global warming and climate change. COP26 is the 26th meeting of the Conference of State Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. In this annual meeting, the delegates from governments, civil society, organizations, people's movements, NGOs, indigenous organizations, trade unions, businesses, and faith leaders, and those with any interest in climate change meet to discuss global actions on climate change. And moreover, COP26 represents a huge opportunity to drive forward global ambitions to save the planet from further deterioration by reducing emissions, strengthening resilience, and adapting to climate change. So during the COP26, we have the opportunity to demand that world leaders commit to bold and just action on the ecological crisis facing our common home. The purpose of this webinar is to share knowledge and engage Franciscans and non-Franciscans alike on how we can be proactive in advocating and calling for bold actions to tackle the current ecological crisis. We will hear from Franciscan experts participating at the COP26 in Glasgow and other Franciscans engaged in climate justice and action at the grassroots. Inspired by Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si, we'll discuss how we can respond to the cry of the earth and the cry of the most vulnerable, especially those threatened by climate change. So before we hear more from the experts, I'll invite our brother, the guardian of the OFM Friary in Glasgow, Father George, to give his remarks and lead us in the opening prayer. Thank you.
So yes, indeed, we're here in the city of Glasgow in Scotland and to the venue of COP26. So my name is Brother George Smulsky, a Franciscan friar resident here in Glasgow in the Franciscan parish of Blessed John Duns Scotus in the city centre. Now, even though I have a Polish surname, you can hear my Scottish accent. So welcome to my country. The Franciscan friars have been here in Glasgow since 1868, when we first ministered to the many migrant workers and displaced people from the Scottish Highlands and also from Ireland. But by the mid-90s, the Franciscan parish had grown so big, there were 11,000 parishioners in this parish here alone. And today, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren of those many settlers now make up much of the population of the diocese and of the city itself. And we continue to welcome and to minister to the many recent incomers, especially from India and Sri Lanka, from Poland and East Europe, and from the continent of Africa too. In fact, the friars were here in Scotland long before the Reformation of the 16th century. And it was a native Scotsman, John Duns Scotus, who joined the Friars Minor about the year 1265 and went on to teach at Oxford and Paris and Cologne. But the friars were not only involved in academic teaching, but also in the social and economic life of the people. It was they who set up the first credit unions, offering loans of money to the poor at a very low interest rate. And they used their influence to represent ordinary people before magistrates and judges, defending Jewish communities from expulsion, administering to the sick and to the dying during times of pandemic and plague. And today we join with this great groundswell of protest and concern to speak up for our wonderful planet under threat of ruin and destruction, and for the multitudes of people who live in it. And for the United Kingdom, this is now the largest gathering of world leaders which it has ever hosted in its history. So this is the world's last best chance to stop climate catastrophe, as John Kerry, President Biden's climate envoy, declared recently. Inspired by Pope Francis' encyclical letter, Laudato Si, we will discuss how we can respond to the cry of the earth and the cry of the most vulnerable, especially those threatened by climate change, as the Holy Father says. So wherever you may be viewing this around the world, I welcome you to our city and to this webinar session. So may what we have begun today together bear much fruit. And as we recall the words of our Holy Father, St. Francis, let us begin again, because up to now we have done nothing. So let us pray. Loving God, we praise your name with all you have created. You are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of creatures. We acknowledge the responsibilities you have placed upon us as stewards of your creation. May the Holy Spirit inspire all political leaders at COP26 as they seek to embrace the changes needed to foster a more sustainable society. Instill in them the courage and the gentleness to implement fairer solutions for the poorest and most vulnerable, and commit their nations to the care of our common home. And we ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brother George, for the prayer and the kind words. Welcome the participants and all of us to this great meeting. Now, without further ado, I'll present our very first guest speaker and an expert currently in Glasgow. Is none other than Budi, who is currently Asia Pacific Program Coordinator. Budi has been following the issue of climate change and human rights over a decade. He has attended several COP meetings, including COP21 in Paris, together with the Franciscans during the historic adoption of Paris Agreement. At the UN Human Rights Council, Budi has also been working closely on the issue of the impacts of climate change on human rights, and contributed through Franciscans International, the establishment of the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Climate Change. He is an Indonesian by nationality and working with the Franciscans International Office in Geneva. Welcome, Budi.
Thank you very much, Ben. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's really a big honor for me to be part of this discussion with all the experts. There are some around the table and many more outside. So I'm really happy that as Franciscan families, as Christian families, and then as a family of those who live in this lovely planet, to get together here at the very right moment in which we are having now our COP26. I will be sharing with you a little bit of some discussion point on how the Franciscan International is involved in the different discussions at the United Nations with regard to the title is Defending the Planet, but it's going to be from the perspective of environmental and climate justice at the United Nations. So, as I don't have to tell you, but you know exactly that there are key impacts of the climate change that can be felt already by almost all in the planet. In some countries, in the last few years, we have continuous fire, like in Australia and the United States and many other countries. The second one. The second, yeah. And then apart from the fire that has been experienced in many places, in some other countries, we experience the drought, in which like few years ago in Kenya and Eastern Africa, the situation was very severe, in which famine took place, and then diseases also took place. Apart from that, in many parts of the world, we also see about the changing of the weather patterns. In my village, for example, we don't know when is the rainy season, when is the dry seasons, what to plant by the farmers. So there is something that is changing, and it can be felt by quite many people in different parts of the world. The next one. And with all those changes that we experience personally or collectively in different parts of the world, we have to think as well about what are the impact of human rights. And as we know that the increasing frequency of extreme weathers, as well as the rising of sea level, floods, they are affected on how we enjoy our human rights. Because those changing patterns of weather, those events of natural disasters, directly or indirectly impacted on how we enjoy our human rights. And those rights include the issue of right to life, access to safe drinking water and sanitation, access to food, access to health, access to housing, etc. And unfortunately, those negative impacts of climate change on human rights are felt disproportionately by those who contributed the less to the climate change. And those who contributed less to climate change, in particular, are people coming from the poorer countries, people coming from lowland area, people coming from the indigenous backgrounds. So it's very sad that those who contributed less, they are the most impacted. Next one. If you remember quite well, if you all remember quite well, the International Panel on Climate Change in 2021 issued a report. And this report is very important for us because it is a report that has been prepared by a group number of scientists. So this is a science-based report. And they have given us the clear warning about the emergency, about the urgency of the situation, in which they say that currently the global warming has reached about 1.1 in comparison with the pre-industrial level. And if the situation will continue by the end of this century, temperature can increase up to 2.7. So there's a small window of opportunity for us between now until 2030, in which we try as much as possible to make the weather not to increase more than 1.5 degree. And then if that will not be achieved, there is a danger that the situation will be irreversible. Next panel, please. Yeah. And then one of the experts of the IPCC has mentioned that stabilizing the climate will require strong, rapid, and sustained reduction in greenhouse gas emission and reaching net zero CO2 emissions. So this is a very strong message that everyone involved in COP26, in particular the decision makers, have to take into account. I think the Prime Minister of UK has mentioned yesterday that we are 1 minute before midnight, right? So it means that we are really at the edge of limit. So we have to act immediately, otherwise it's going to be too late. So this is a message that all of us need to keep in our mind. Next one. And what is the response of Franciscan International on that issue? Franciscan International is a human rights organization. It is a Franciscan organization, and we have the mandate, as Ben has explained it in the beginning, to respond to the situation. So we are trying really to work on the issue of climate justice, environmental justice, because we have the obligation to care about our planet, our common home. So the issue of climate justice, the issue of climate change, the issue of environment is really at the heart of Franciscan Internationals, knowing that we are representing the Franciscan families. Next one. Yes. So if we can simplify it in three mechanisms, Franciscan International has been working quite continuously through three different UN mechanisms. The first one is the UNFCCC, in which that's why we are here now together, because we believe that UNFCCC in particular, through the Conference of the Parties, can respond by providing strong policy in responding to this climate change issue. And then, of course, we all know that Paris Agreement is the result of all these common efforts together, and it's time really for us to engage ourselves to give our commitment in implementing Paris Agreement. The second mechanism that we are using is the human rights mechanisms. As Ben has mentioned, that we are very much involved in creating a certain mechanism at the UN. The three particular mechanisms that we've been using is in the creation of the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Climate Change. I will explain later. And then also groundbreaking international global recognition on the right to safe, healthy, and sustainable environment. And also for us being connected with the people from the grassroots, we are regularly providing reports and feedbacks from our community, from our network to the United Nations, to the decision maker process, so that they will understand what's happening on the ground. At the same time, we've been using also the mechanism through the Sustainable Development Goals, or what you know as Agenda 2030. In particular, we are trying really to push the issue of policy coherence within the international arena. Next one. So in the human right, in the Paris Agreement, just as a reminder to ourselves, the human right language in the Paris Agreement is very present. If you remember very well that in the preambular paragraph, human right is very much present by the paragraph saying that acknowledging that climate change is a common concern of humankind, therefore parties should, when taking action to address climate change, respect, promote, and consider their respective obligation on human rights. That should include right to health, right of indigenous people, local communities, migrant children, persons with disabilities, etc. So it's quite important that in the preambular paragraph, the issue of human rights has appeared, and it affirmed that it should inspire the implementations of the Paris Agreement. And it is also quite important to take note that the issue of climate justice has also been reflected in the preambular paragraph of Paris Agreement. As you know, that climate justice is a language in which the church network has been using a lot. So it's very encouraging that the issue of climate justice, or the expression of climate justice, is indeed included within the Paris Agreement. Next one. It doesn't yet. Yeah. So one other issue that I would like also to emphasize to you is that the issue of the nationally determined contribution, or the NDCs. I think you've heard a lot about this nationally determined contributions. This is very important issue because the NDC, the jargon that we use, is an expression of commitment of all state parties to the UNFCCC on how they should engage themselves, on how they should commit themselves in implementing Paris Agreement. This is very important. This NDCs is the commitment that is reflected by each member state of the UNFCCC every 5 years. The first NDC was expressed in Paris in 2015. The reviewed or second NDCs normally was presented in 2020 last year, but because of the COP26 didn't take place last year, but this year. So this year is expected to be the second round of the expressions of the NDCs coming from all state parties. So it is very important because through these actions reflected the NDCs, we do expect that states put more ambitious target in trying to achieve or to limit the increase of the temperature not more than 1.5 degree by the end of the century, or if possible, now the window of opportunity is in 2030. So this NDC is very important. However, unfortunately, many states do not renew their NDCs. So they do not put strong commitment yet on how to really limit their green gas house emission. I think many of you have heard about the G20 meeting that finished yesterday, and to our disappointment, the member of the G20 is not ambitious enough in implementation of the Paris Agreement. So this is something that we need to keep an eye as well during this COP26 process on how the G20 is taking this issue of climate change seriously. The second one, the next one. Sorry, there's a gap between when we press the button and when it appears. And another issue that Franciscans International has been working on is on the issue of the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. The Article 6 of Paris Agreement is one of the key articles in which it discusses regarding the issue of, we call it this carbon market mechanism. This is very important because the implementation of Paris Agreement is done through what we call as Paris Rulebook. The Paris Rulebook has been finalized. However, one of the articles that has not been finalized in terms of the implementation is Article 6. And now they are still negotiating. For us, working on the human right perspective, this Article 6 is very important because we would like to make sure that the carbon market mechanism should ensure the safeguards of human rights. It's not yet the case. It is still something that we have to struggle. It is something that still we need to push to the decision makers. So this is one of the most contentious issues now being discussed in COP26. So there is coalitions of many NGOs in really trying to push the decision makers in the negotiations to make sure that human rights safeguards are included in the Paris Rule Book. So for us, upholding human rights is one of the key priority issues for Franciscan International, because if this one is not done correctly, what will happen is that we will repeat again the mistake we made under the Kyoto Protocol. We understand that the Kyoto Protocol, there were certain mechanisms in which were meant to address the climate crisis. However, many of those mechanisms did not fulfill what they promised. So therefore, this is a last chance for us that this mechanism, if ever it is adopted, it should really address the climate crisis, climate emergency. And from our perspective, it should really ensure that people will not be victimized, that the human rights of these people will be upheld and respected. Next one. For us, while we are in COP26, there are some key messages that we would like to pass through the decision makers. The first is that climate justice is a matter of urgency. It is important for us to act now. So to achieve this climate justice, we set up 4 objectives. The first is about the ambition. So everyone, all the state parties, and even us, we need to raise our ambition to keep the global temperature below 1.5 by 2030. It's increasing now, but it should not increase up to 1.5 by 2030. It is important. It has to be agreed by all state parties that are here now in COP26. The second issue is about human rights. As I said earlier, I think it's very important. It's mandatory that the UNFCCC should establish strong safeguards to ensure respect of human rights in every single climate action to implement the Paris Agreement. And then the climate finance. Climate finance is also a key issue. We know that the climate finance has been discussed for years within UNFCCC. Unfortunately, the promises that have been given by the developed states are not yet fulfilled. So it is very important that the Green Climate Fund that have been promised should be fulfilled, so that it will allow the least developed countries, the small state island countries, to be able to support their climate actions, so that they can adapt themselves to the new situations in which often they are put into the disadvantaged part. And last but not least is about the need to have strong commitment to end fossil fuel. So the decision makers should ensure the just energy transitions, and this can be done effectively. One of them is through phasing out from the fossil fuels without delay. Next one. The second issue is that we, within Franciscan International, as I said, that we are really trying to bring the concerns coming from the Franciscan families to the United Nations, to the decision makers, so that they will be able to see the reality of the people on the ground. I'll just give you a little bit of examples here. We talk about, we submitted a report regarding the issue of the impact of deforestation in Solomon Islands. I think Chris and Clark will mention about this issue in Solomon Island, but also we work on the issue of West Papua. And then we also talk, we also submitted several reports on the issue of the impacts of extractive activities, either in Brazil, in Congo, in Philippines, etc. And we also, another example is the submissions of the report regarding the impact of climate change as part of the contributing factors for people to migrate in Central America, either it's internal or cross-border migrations. And then, as I said in the beginning, we are trying to influence the policy-making process at the UN. The two historic decisions taken just a few weeks ago, a few days ago, is that the UN has committed to address climate change through the UN human rights mechanism by establishing a a special rapporteur on human rights and climate change. So the special rapporteur is a UN expert that will look at the climate change from the human rights perspective. So it is very important for us to see that the impact of climate change, of course, is on the environment, but in fact, it is also affecting the enjoyment of human rights. So this rapporteur will be able really to communicate with those who are affected, receiving reports, even receiving complaints coming from those who are affected. So it is not yet appointed, but it is one of, let's say, the contribution of Franciscan International in trying to set up a policy-making process at the United Nations. The second issue is about the global recognitions on the right to healthy environment. This is also very historical because the right to healthy environment has been acknowledged or has been implemented in several countries. However, it was not yet recognized as a global as a global recognition. In the Human Rights Council that took place in September, we succeeded in ensuring the states the importance on this issue. Thus, this there is a global recognition now on the right to healthy environment. The next one. Yeah, last but not least, as I said, that as Franciscan International, we are trying also to promote the Sustainable Development Goals or Agenda 2030. What we are trying to do at the international level is really to ensure that there is a coherence between different instances at the UN, either it's climate negotiations, human rights negotiations, development negotiations. There's a need for them to communicate. There's a need for us as well to communicate so that people will not work in silos, but there's the coherence. So therefore, we published what we call as a toolbox that was published a few years ago, but it's going to be renewed again. So this toolbox can be used by the network of Franciscan Internationals and beyond on ensuring that the different groups that are not working in silos to ensure that there is a coherence. For example, in this framework, during the COVID period, a few months ago, we organized a dialogue on the issue of SDGs from the human rights, from the climate change perspective, and bringing different experts, either the diplomats, the UN, or the civil society, to sit down together and to have an exchange on this view to make sure that the discussion will really benefit to the creations of a coherence policy at all levels. And of course, we always try to put forward the Franciscans and our partners to be directly involved in these negotiations, in this dialogue, in this discussion, to ensure that there is a bridge between what's happening on the ground, together with what discussion or policy-making process that takes place at the national level. So I can finish with this one, and then we will discuss further through the question and answers. Thank you very much, Ben. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Budi. Budi has actually highlighted on the impacts of climate change. He has also told us how so many people around the world, especially the vulnerable, are already suffering due to climate change. And he has told us how all these have grave implications on human rights. He has explained on the strategies and mechanisms that FI uses to advocate for climate justice, including influencing policy at the UN. And finally, Budi has given us key messages of advocacy at the COP26, including stating that climate justice is a matter of urgency. So thank you so much, Budi. We have several questions for you. We'll take them at the end, and I would like to encourage the participants, if you have any question, please use the Q&A or write in the chat box. I will take all those questions at the end. Thank you so much. Now, our next speaker is Brother Christopher John from the SSF. Brother Christopher is the Minister General of the Society of St. Francis Anglican Franciscan Brothers in 5 provinces around the world. He lives in New South Wales, Australia, and we are really humbled, so humble because of your sacrifice, Christopher, considering that it's 3 a.m. or something in Australia and you're here with us. So welcome to give you a presentation.
Thank you, Ben, for your welcome, and greetings to all of you around the world, wherever you are and in whatever time zone you are. Pace bene. Thanks for the opportunity to join the webinar, and I'm delighted as an Anglican Franciscan to be with you, even at 3 a.m. And it's great to hear how Franciscans are engaged at COP26, adding to the many voices concerned for the future of life on the planet. Today, I hope to be a voice on behalf of our many brothers in Solomon Islands, and particularly brothers Warwick and Lent, who've been taking the lead on the issue of logging. I didn't want to ask them to be up and online at this time of morning as well, though, so I'm here on behalf of them, really. Solomon Islands is a Pacific nation of many tropical islands, heavily forested, with a rich ecosystem. The Pacific has a number of such small island states, but really they are large ocean states. The land is small, but the ocean between is large. The ocean is also the means of communication. You can get in a boat and go anywhere. Forests are an incredibly important part of the ecology of the Solomons. They supply timber and other materials for canoes and housing. They provide an environment to grow food crops and a resource of medicines. They're part of a larger ecosystem, which includes mangroves and all that supports marine life and reefs where fish can be caught. The reefs also absorb almost all the wave energy and keep coastal villages safer from storms. Yet, this is a fragile environment. In my visits to the Solomons, I hear a few concerns repeated time and time. Logging, climate change, corrupt politicians. And you won't be surprised to know that these are all connected. Extractive logging has increased greatly since the 1980s. Now, logging companies come from overseas, mainly Malaysia, negotiate deals with government, pay bribes, and move into village areas. They construct logging roads up into the mountains behind the villages, clear fell whole areas, leaving just the rubbish behind. They clear mangroves and construct logging ponds where the logs are stored waiting to be transported by lighters out to the ships which will take them away for export. Loggers employ local labor, which can sometimes be a good thing, but they also take local women as their wives. And there's there is a certain level of reported of abuse to do with this. People may hope that financial compensation will help pay school fees, or get a boat or truck to take produce for sale, or help them build a better house. These things happen a little, but the money isn't much, isn't always distributed fairly, and goes as quickly as water in the sand. The environmental damage is obvious. Denuded hillsides, slips, flash floods, muddied waterways, polluted water supplies, destructions of gardens and food gathering areas. Other damage is longer term, such as the disruption to a complex ecosystem. And some damage is social, the disruption to custom and the network of relationships which bind people together. Increased alcohol consumption, which is the fuel to so much gender-based violence. The damage is also spiritual, the loss of spiritual values of environment and its connections with ancestors and hopes for future generations. And the activity of logging takes people away from the church fellowship, which has been a vital part of village life for many years. Our brothers know this well. These are the villages they come from and visit on mission programs and whose people they know. They often talk about it. Last year came the chance to turn talk to action And through Franciscans International, we got involved with the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights. This UN Human Rights Council program reviews human rights in all the member states of the UN in a regular cycle. We partnered with the Dominican Sisters and Friars in Solomons, and also with their NGO at the UN, Dominicans for Justice and Peace. Our joint submission touched on a range of human rights abuses linked with logging. We then lobbied a range of likely sympathetic diplomatic missions, both in Geneva and Honiara. A number of member states then included these human rights issues as specific recommendations in their reports to the Solomons government. The final result was that the government accepted almost all the recommendations related to logging issues. These include protecting economic, social, and cultural rights of local communities, ensuring effective remedies when abuses have occurred. All forest exploitation projects are to include prior and informed consultation with the concerned local and indigenous communities. The government is to ensure the conservation and protection of fragile habitats against deforestation and forest degradation, and strengthen sustainable forest management practices to protect human rights related to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Well, this is a great achievement, but it's only the beginning. The government has accepted these recommendations and will be reviewed regularly on how well they are keeping them. This now creates an opportunity for us and other partners to be part of the solution, offering support and monitoring, education, and keeping the international eyes open to all that is happening. In the initial stages of the UPR process, the government had a response to all the human rights issues raised. They would say, "We're working on it." And then, "What are you doing about climate change?" Climate change is an existential threat to small Pacific islands. They are already being inundated by rising sea levels. Gardens and drinking water are turning salty. I believe our efforts at COP26 will inform and influence those who make decisions. By raising the voices of Solomon Islanders and other Pacific Island nations, we are amplifying their cry for help and working for their future survival. This is what we are doing. So thank you, and my best wishes and prayers for a successful outcome. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Brother Christopher. Thank you for sharing your experience and those of the many Franciscans you work with in Australia and the small Pacific Islands, including the Solomon Islands. You have given us a clear testimony of the people from the islands who are feeling the full impact of climate change. And I think the Franciscans have not been silent, as you have testified. They have participated in things like Universal Periodical Review to advocate for the vulnerable. Happy enough, some of your recommendations have been accepted by some governments. Thank you so much. We'll have some questions for you later. So at this point in time, we're going to get another testimony from a Franciscan from the Philippines. Yes, her name is Miss Melin Salute. Malene is a former SFIC and now continuing the mission of God, the mission God has entrusted to her, serving the poor and the marginalized sectors for almost 30 years by working with the different NGOs and church organizations in the Philippines. She has been the executive director of the Fellowship for the Care of Creation Association, and for more than 10 years. Since she could not stay till late in the night, she decided to send us the following presentation, the video presentation or recording that I will now be shown. Thank you.
Peace and all good. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to be with you today. And I would like to thank Father Angel and Brother Ayodi and Buti, who had been with us in the past years in some of our activities. I am Maylene de la Cruz Saluta. I'm working as the Executive Director of the Fellowship for the Care of Creation Association Incorporated, or the FCCAI. Our organization was established by the Franciscans composed of the Order of Friars Minor, the Franciscan Sisters of the Immaculate Conception, and some secular Franciscan order in 1988, when the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines released their pastoral letter on what is happening to our beautiful land. As early as 1988, the Franciscans organized a group called Foundation for the Care of Creation Incorporated, establishing ecology desks in Franciscan parishes and institutions that aims to educate their constituent to care for creation. But in 2010, the Board of Trustees of our organization decided to change the name to Fellowship for the Care of Creation Association Incorporated. We envision that by 2027, FCCEI shall have actively spearheaded the promotion and living out of Laudato Si in parishes, schools, formation institutions, and communities nationwide. FCCAI's main program is to organize sustainable earth communities in some parts of the country, teaching the farmers about sustainable agriculture or agroecology, which is a method that heals and nurtures the earth and is an alternative to the chemical based method of farming, which has resulted to declining yields and poison the environment. Creation spirituality is always integrated in all our programs and activities. In this way, FCCAI believes that using organic and indigenous technology in farming will contribute in mitigating climate change and will change their perspective and way of life. We do it through household development approach on which we do not only involve the parents, but we include their children in their different programs and activities. We build and establish a Laudato Si farm where everyone will be part in developing the farm, and it serves as a model farm or an educational hub for organic agriculture. At the moment, the small farmers in Davao were able to come up with a livelihood project since majority of them are cacao farmers. They are now selling pure dark chocolates in the market and it serves as an additional income for their families. FCCAI is not the only one doing it, but Franciscan fraternities and communities and parishes initiate projects and programs that will help in climate change adaptation and mitigation among the poor. They also organize communities and introduce programs and projects that will help them develop their environment, their economic, cultural, social, and even political situation in their local communities. FCCAI collaborates with the other Franciscan groups like the Franciscan Healthcare Crossing Borders, doing medical mission among the poorest of the poor in the farthest areas of the country. It was also this collaboration that went to a mission in the island of Homonhon, and as Franciscans, we stood for the fight against massive mining in the historical island by releasing a statement and submit it to the government agencies involved. FCCAI, together with other Franciscan congregations and fraternities, is joining some environmental groups in lobbying for policies related to ecological justice and promote the sapat or enough lifestyle. FCCAI printed some posters calling every citizen to act now for climate justice. The Franciscans also advocate human rights and the care for creation by opposing the different environmental destructions like logging, mining, coal plant, illegal fishing, and other activities detrimental to environment. The Franciscans support the advocacy for climate justice and continuously educating the people on the state of the environment, integrating the challenge of Laudato Si and its 7 goals. Some Franciscans are working very closely with and for the indigenous people by organizing them and conduct programs and projects that will lift them from poverty and hunger using human rights as the basis of every action, empowering the poor communities for the protection and assertion of human dignity and fight for their rights as part of God's creation. We are also aware that our country is one of the most vulnerable country to climate change. Typhoons, floods, volcanic eruptions, drought, forest denudation, soil erosion, increasing population, dwindling water resources, and currently the pandemic have impacted on our way of life. The Franciscans are also involved in the pursuit of justice for all the victims of human rights violation in the Philippines, like the extrajudicial killing that is happening even up to now. The issue of environment is non-exclusive, and this is the reason why FCCAI is not only collaborating with Franciscans, but we are also working in partnership with other congregations like the Dominicans, Augustinians, and Carmelites. FCCAI is a member of the Dominican family for JPCC and the co-coordinator for the Environment Committee, giving orientation on climate justice or climate emergency and helping them to make plans for the JPCC work, particularly on Laudato Si and its goal. FCCAI believes that much has still to be done on the environment advocacy, especially that we are now at the tipping point of climate emergency. Education, research, community organizing, and capacity building, and many more, is very necessary in order to have a greater force to heal and recover our Mother Earth. We need to unite. We need a strong passion in our advocacy and work together regardless of age, faith, gender orientation, race, and color. Saint Francis became the patron saint of ecology, not only because he loved nature, but because he perceived the interrelatedness of creation with Christ. As followers, let us be one in the care for our creation and become harbingers of hope for the healing and recovery of God's creation. Together, let us build one earth community. As what St. Francis said, let us begin again, for until now, we have done very little. Thank you very much, and maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Ms. Salute, for those experiences from the Philippines and what the Franciscans and the FCCI are doing in terms of sustainability projects to help the vulnerable. As we move towards the end, we are now inviting our brother Clark, who is currently the guardian of the Hellfield Friary in the UK. It is part of the he is part of the Society of St. Francis, the Franciscan Brothers in the Anglican Communion. So welcome, brother, to give you a presentation, especially also highlighting on what the Franciscans are doing in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. It's really good to be here with all of you. So good afternoon or good morning or whatever time it is where you are. It's a real pleasure to be with you in the room and online. So I've been asked to speak about the role of Franciscans working at the grassroots on the environment, climate change, and human rights. And so like Christopher John, I'm an Anglican Franciscan And though I'm an American, I'm guardian of a friary in Dorset in the south of England, where we do our very best to address the needs of the environment and tackle climate change at the grassroots. So working at the grassroots means walking the talk, living differently on the planet, living sustainably and telling people about it, inviting their participation and collaboration as we aim for authenticity and effectiveness. So Hillfield Friary is situated on 50 acres of land. And we have a small herd of Shetland cattle, Dorset polled sheep, pigs, chickens, and bees. The Friary vegetable gardens this year produced an abundance of vegetables and fruit, and we are entirely organic. Central to our life is the Franciscan conviction that we're not the only species around, that we share the land, meaning the planet, with many species. And many of these are at risk because of humanity's thoughtless way of living. So to have biodiversity is a sign of a healthy planet benefiting all. It's easy to see why addressing climate change is a human rights issue, a justice issue as much as anything else. And therefore, we do what we can to do our part. So our local efforts have greater significance, I think. They include laying hedges instead of cutting them with machines, providing a wonderful habitat for dormice, rabbits, badgers, squirrels, birds, insects. One of our particular objects of concern is the Duke of Burgundy butterfly. It's tiny and easy to overlook, but there are only a few places in the country where it exists. And so to help these small creatures, our sisters, as we are after all Franciscans, we cut brush to encourage growth of the plants the butterflies need to lay their eggs. Helping butterflies, dormice, and hedgehogs is an expression of our care for the marginalized. These and other species, where these and other species thrive, you have a healthy ecosystem. There is life-giving balance. And where they are absent, you have evidence of the destruction of habitat. So we've sued for divorce from fossil fuels, and the terms are still being worked out, but we have an electric car. We have a biomass boiler to heat our buildings, burning logs from the woodland near us, sustainably harvested. We have solar panels that produce enough for us to sell back into the electric grid. So, following our example, the world needs to triple its renewable energy resources. All of this work on the land, our outreach efforts, and welcome to all and sundry, is done by a group of ordinary people. We have a community of 6 Franciscan brothers and 22 other people, some of whom are with us this afternoon in this room, and I know online. And they range in age from 1 to 81. Some are differently able, some are married, some are men and women representing different countries and cultures. Argentina, Germany, and the US being our current diversity profile. Living in community lightens the footprint of us all, and community life is a growing trend. Many secular groups are springing up because people recognize it's healthier for the planet to share resources than for each of us to have our own. So the Franciscan community is sort of ahead of the curve. And apart from working on the land and offering ministry to people as they come to us, we try to tell our story. We've been on television. We're going to be on Songs of Praise this coming Sunday. We've been on the BBC, Channel 4 radio, and we've written books. So this book, Seeing Differently, I think you can see it there, is written by 3 of my brothers in the Society of St. Francis, and it makes explicit the connection between Franciscan theology and spirituality and care for the environment in these times of climate crisis. I've written a book, Running to Resurrection, a soul-making chronicle, which not only talks about my personal commitment to running and fostering a healthy life, it celebrates being out of doors. Being in nature is probably the best way to know what's happening out there and who is thriving and who is deteriorating. This book, Accompaniment Community in Nature, by one of our Hillfield community members, a member of our audience this afternoon, Jonathan Herbert, is a powerful reflection on how to overcome isolation, marginalization, and alienation through meaningful connection with nature and each other. If you're going to work for climate justice, I think you need to get outside and feel the sun and the rain, the heat and the cold, get wet and covered with dirt and dust. In other words, be in love with the land and all of its particularity. And so this love calls some of us to break the law, courting fines and jail time. Community members work with Christian Climate Action, Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, and they've been jailed for it, and we are particularly proud of them. We are partnered with Orocha, a Christian conservation organization. We have a neighborhood coalition to work together on conservation issues called the High Stoy Conservation Cluster. And we support global advocacy working with Franciscans International at the UN in collaboration with Franciscans all over the world. So this is the way of St. Francis in the 21st century, and what it looks like to work at the grassroots level is to have a many-pronged approach. Through recognizing our interrelatedness and kinship with all creation, we have our work cut out for us. Practical, hands-on work. Whether it's baking bread, pruning shrubs, or protesting, it's work grounded in love and joy, inspired by St. Francis and the Franciscan tradition. Our deep protective concern for the future of the planet and all life propels us forward. So forward we go. I can say local Franciscans, at least some of us farmer friars hungry for justice for the whole earth, have come to Glasgow praying and advocating 4 things. That all nations push for the implementing of the Paris Agreement Rulebook. 2, that they work for agreement on the national determined contribution, which we've already heard about, those greenhouse gas emitting countries submitting their commitments by the end of the year as already agreed upon. The slogan around here is keep 1.5 alive. 3, make a decision on long-term finance. And 4, to accept the climate change report. It's not somebody's opinion, it's science, and it clearly outlines the tremendous challenge facing the world at this time. So join us at the grassroots level in making the world a better place for us all and for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Clark, for really sharing your personal experiences and those ones of your friends over there. Told us about the different initiatives, including writing several books, and really challenging us that if you work for climate justice, you must be in touch with nature. You have to love nature. You have to put your passion in it. Thank you so much, Clark, once more. Now, we will now move to our almost last speaker before we go to a very amazing presentation by Angel, and also presenting to us the OFM, the song that the OFM produced for the COP. But now I'd like to introduce my colleague and our great friend, Lin Moma, who combines a human rights law background and her passion for the environment to tackle climate change and promote social justice. She currently serves as the advocacy director of the Laudato Si movement. She has an extended history of working in the environmental justice sector, most recently serving as Africa Program Director with Wild Aid and Greenpeace Africa over the past 6 years. From drafting mineral legislation with communities affected by mining in Ghana and advocating for rights to affordable clean water in Southern Africa, to the fight for climate justice internationally. Lindlin's heart and career have centered on protecting the environment for the enjoyment of all. Lindlin lives in remote Johannesburg, where she shares the joy of organic gardening with her husband and 3 children. She believes in joining the Laudato Si family. She is deepening her faith in synergy with her vocation. Welcome, Lindlin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Father Ben. It's a pleasure to be here, sitting in the midst of all Franciscan brothers. I'm humbled, but also honored to join you in this conversation from Glasgow. I'm here to talk about the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition that Laudato Si movement launched this year in April. And indeed, it's time for action. As we've all heard that the time to act is now. We're 1 minute to the hour, and we just cannot stay anymore without acting. So as we know, 2021 is a decisive year for our common home. Pope Francis has urged all of us to act to give and make sure that climate emergency and the biodiversity crisis is given the utmost attention. So with this in mind, we launched the Healthy People, Healthy Planet petition this year, and we aim to collect signatures of Catholics and organizations all over the world. Our petition actually urges urgent climate change, but also urges that climate change cannot be fought alone. We need to combine climate change and the biodiversity crisis. So let me go ahead and just talk about why we need to tackle climate change and the biodiversity crisis together. Biodiversity loss is a big threat to humans and also to climate change. The continued loss of it will undermine our ability to address poverty reduction, food and water security, health, and even the aspect of leaving no one behind. It is very clear that from various reports that have come out that climate change cannot be fought without biodiversity. Secondly, the poor and the most vulnerable will be affected the most by the climate crisis. We need to acknowledge that in order to fight the climate crisis, we must respond to both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. These are the people who will be the most affected by the climate crisis, and as has been indicated earlier on, they were not the ones. We're not the ones that caused the climate crisis, but yet the poor and the most vulnerable will be affected the most. Again, as has been mentioned, we need to make sure that the national determined contributions are at the peak. This is the time we must keep 1.5 alive, and that we must keep through all the national determined contributions to make sure that greenhouse gas emissions do not contribute, do not keep on getting higher and higher. We need to make sure that temperature increases stay beyond 1.5. We're already at 1.1. At this stage, we cannot continue. We're seeing multiple crises, the COVID crisis, the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis. We must change now. We must reverse the clock. It is time for us to restore our common home through NDCs, ambitious NDCs that address the fact that 1.5 degrees cannot be met. Also, the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition calls for 50% conservation of land and water restoration, but also it calls for sustainable management of all the rest of land and water bodies to ensure no more biodiversity loss. At this point in time, we see that the planet is in crisis. We cannot afford any more biodiversity loss. And in making sure that our biodiversity loss stops, we must recognize, we must ensure, we must support the centrality of the role of indigenous people. They are the custodians of biodiversity. They are protecting the biodiversity of the entire world. We must support indigenous people. We must protect their rights to care for biodiversity through local customs, traditional practices. Indeed, leaving out indigenous people, leaving out communities, local communities, is a threat to biodiversity in itself. Hence, as faith communities, we came together to raise our voices, to sign the Healthy People, Healthy Planet petition, launched by the Laudato Si movement and all its partners, to give the earth a voice. Our common home is suffering. Our families are suffering. We're living through a mass extinction of biodiversity. We're living through a COVID crisis. We're living through a climate crisis. We need to reconcile ourselves with creation. It is time to do that now. Hence, we're calling on world leaders to take bold action to give the earth a voice. And how have we done this at Laudato Si movements? We've worked with our animators, we've worked with our local circles, we've worked with our local chapters to make sure that they are trained to go out and have the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition signed, be it online and also be it offline. Of course, taking consideration of the COVID realities. We've also promoted a petition at many international events like this one, but also at the 52nd International Eucharist Congress that took place in Budapest. During the season of creation, we gave our animators, our chapters, a challenge, and we all took part in that challenge, making sure that the Abraham tent was an area to celebrate biodiversity, but also to sign the Healthy People and Healthy Planet petition. Indeed, taking advocacy action within the Abraham tent really brought action together, and also in the celebration of season of creation. These are just some images of how we worked with our local communities and our local parishes all over the globe, in Poland, in Italy, in Brazil, in the Philippines, to sign the Healthy People, Healthy Planet petition in giving the earth a voice. We were so honored to have Cardinal Turkson actually sign the petition in France this year in, at the IUCN conference. He actually launched the petition in France with the Bishop of Marseille. And we also had Father Josh do a video promoting the Healthy People, Healthy Planet petition, Father Josh of the Dicastery for Human Development. Thank you. Thank you. And being a mother, we made sure that children were not left out also in expressing their ideas about how they perceive biodiversity, in contributing to make sure that, you know, the planet is secured for them. They drew pictures, they expressed their ideas, gathering with us to make sure that indeed they are not left out in the Healthy People, Healthy Planet petition. With Laudato Si movements, with Laudato Si chapters, we also went on television. We went to give radio interviews promoting the petition. And we also took this to local churches, now one of our local parishes in South Africa, in Glasgow. We signed a petition with one of the bishops, Bishop Palane, in South Africa, and he encouraged the youth to go out also to sign the petition. And our sisters were not left out. Our own very Father Ben, during the season of creation and the celebration, the blessings of animals, took part in the petition in Kenya, and he encouraged sisters to also go out and sign the petition. So after this petition was launched in April this year, we have over 432 Catholic partners, as of today, still counting, who have taken part in the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition, and over 120,000 individual signatures from Catholics all around the world have joined to sign this petition to make sure that the earth has a voice. So we're here in Glasgow in communion with our brothers, making sure that these petitions are handed over, and tomorrow the Laudato Si movement with the interfaith group will be delivering this petition to the UNFCCC leaders. Please do join us. It's going to happen tomorrow in the evening. We had a promise that these petitions will be delivered in Glasgow, and we're here to make sure that those petitions are delivered tomorrow. Of course, it's going to be an interfaith event. There are other groups who have also signed, who have also promoted various petitions. And we want the world leaders who are here to hear us out, to hear the Catholics out, to hear all the Catholic groups who have promoted these petitions, that we want to give the earth a voice. Thank you.
Oh, Lin, thanks. Thanks a lot. Lin has indeed worked a lot to implement and promote the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition. And through the petition and many other initiatives, especially also during the season of creation, many Franciscans around the world were motivated and inspired to take action. Of course, with the also inspiration of Laudato Si. And we hope that through this petition, and when you present it indeed, world leaders at the COP will listen to the voices of many people who have signed the petition and indeed take action. Thanks once more, and congratulations for your great work. So now we are going to our last presentation before we take questions. We have our very own brother Angel Cortez, who is a Friar Minor, OFM. Currently, he serves as the Assistant Director at the General Office for Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation in Rome. And he will also present a very special song made by OFMs for the COP. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Ben. Mabuhay. Greetings of peace and all good to our brothers and sisters all over the world. Especially a big hug to our brothers and sisters from the Anglican Communion, our Anglican Franciscans, and to everybody who's participating in this hybrid webinar. It is indeed a great opportunity to with the Franciscan family journey to this COP26, especially with Franciscan International. You know, I was asked to share some experiences about working as an inter-Franciscan commission. Well, I started working for advocacy in the Philippines when I was still the provincial animator in our province and executive secretary of the major superiors in the Philippines. And I would say the key to success in this kind of work is collaboration. And I believe in a collaborative work, we are challenged to do that. Nobody will be left behind. I think now, this kind of setup, we are working hand in hand together. First order, second order, lay Franciscan, Anglican Franciscan, everybody. We have that one goal, that we are faithful to the call of our Seraphic Father, St. Francis. Not only to romanticize the canticle of creatures, but to put our faith into action. And putting that faith into action is remembering a lot of stories from our experiences down there in the grassroots, as our brother Clark shared. And remembering those stories is to go to one place that nobody is hearing, and those are the grave. Exhume those bodies who were martyred because of climate change and its impact. Exhume those victims of mining and a lot of catastrophic environmental things that had happened. I am saying this because I'm from the Philippines. I witnessed how Typhoon Haiyan impacted our country. In a span of seconds, thousands of people died, including the dreams of young people to bring their families out of poverty. I remember people who died in earthquakes. And even last year, remembering the beginning of the pandemic, there's a volcanic eruption in the Philippines. And responding to this work, as an OFM, I cannot do nothing. May we have funds to support, but without collaborative efforts, we cannot reach millions of people or thousands of people meeting us because of the inter-Franciscan collaboration in the Philippines. And I believe a lot of Franciscans who are participating in this webinar can testify that collaborative work is a key to success to our advocacy. That's why I'm very happy that as a delegation in here in Glasgow, I am with my brother Anglican Clark, and we are with our brothers from Franciscan International, and now we were joined by Laudato Si movement, who is a great ally. But again, exhume those bodies and tell their stories. I want that the world will not just listen to our flowery words, to those speeches that will deliver promises, but we don't know. We're hoping that something will really happen here in Glasgow. I've been working for this cause of climate advocacy for about 4 years, and going to a lot of areas, same question is being asked by the people. Is there a hope out of this cause that we are calling? As a Franciscan, are we making an impact, or because we are just faithful to St. Francis? Or we are just romanticizing our spirituality? But we heard a lot of testimonies from my colleagues here, and those are stories coming from the people who are really impacted. In Rome, we have the Inter-Franciscan Commission, and we call them Roman 6. It is composed of the Friars Minor, Conventual, Capuchin, the International Conference of Third Orders, the OFS. We meet twice a month. We do collaborative work. We plan for formation online, offline. And I know even in your own conferences in countries, you are doing it. But again, what are these things telling us? Are we really doing a collaborative work because we wanted to help in saving the planet? Are we doing this collaborative work because we wanted to fulfill our projects? We want to finish it, and we want to put our names on it? Or are we faithful because we believe that we are stewards of the earth and we hear the cry of the earth and cry of the poor? I want to end my sharing with a beautiful song created just for this COP26. It is a consortium spearheaded by the UN Museums in Colombia, by our office, and a lot of artists like Catalina, a famous singer in Colombia, our brother Sandesh from the province in Austria, and a lot of musicians put together a song not only to call for a healthy planet, but to listen to the cry of the earth. That's why the title of the song is Grita Tierra. I hope as we conclude in this webinar as one Franciscan family, we listen to this song, we ask ourselves, what is my contribution to save Mother Earth? As a Franciscan, am I faithful of being steward of Mother Earth as we hear her cry? Let us listen to the song, reflect, and pray for the success of this COP26 here in Glasgow.
Gritan tus ríos, sufren tus bosques, claman tus mares. Llora cada gota de agua de tus manantiales. Llora cada gota de agua de tus manantiales. En tus entrañas gritan montañas tan maltratadas. Se escucha el clamor de la selva siendo devastada. Se escucha el clamor de la selva siendo devastada. Grita, tierra, que se oiga tu voz, que los corazones recuerden de nuevo el amor. Grita, tierra, canta tu canción. Quiero ver tu danza de vida llena de color. Miles de especies viven el drama de su extinción. Toda vida vale, cada creación nace del amor. Toda vida vale, cada creación nace del amor. Abandonada voz de los pobres, se oye tu dolor. Un clamor de auxilio que pide tan solo inclusión. Un clamor de auxilio que pide tan solo inclusión. Grita, tierra, que se oiga tu voz, que los corazones recuerden de nuevo el amor. Grita, tierra, canta tu canción. Quiero ver tu danza de vida plena de color.
Amada Madre Tierra, nuestra casa común, amada Madre Tierra, nuestra vida eres tú. Gracias por el bosque, gracias por el agua, gracias por la selva y por la montaña. Amada Madre Tierra, vamos regresando, vamos recordando nuestro ser esencial, volver a la ley de origen, a la ley natural.
Any kind of respect, I'm begging you to act, accepting the facts, we don't deal but to relax, yeah. Get up, please, appreciate the landscape, species who win the race, every mountain, every place. For the future that's bright and we all chase, using opportunities or losing it in all cases. Make every day a better day on planet Earth, every plant, every animal, and every bird.
Toda criatura en su existencia vibra en armonía. Hay plena alegría en cada ser vivo, un canto a la vida. Grita, tierra, que se oiga tu voz, que los corazones recuerden de nuevo el amor. Grita, tierra, canta tu canción. Quiero ver tu danza de vida plena de color. Grita, tierra, que se oiga tu voz, que los corazones recuerden de nuevo el amor. Grita, tierra, canta tu canción. La tierra es casa común, es herencia de Dios. La tierra es casa común, es herencia de Dios.
Wow, thank you so very much, Brother Angel, for that great presentation, especially also on the work of the Roman 6 and the OFM Justice and Peace, and the beautiful song that the OFM friars made for the COP. It's amazing. I think it will be trading very soon, and congratulations for that great work. Now we have remained with very few minutes before we end our webinar meeting in Glasgow. I'll just give opportunity for very few questions, a few selected questions, and the first one will go to Budi. What mechanisms are you using to persuade the decision makers to incorporate your proposal in the action plan? And I think it's referring to the COP26.
So thank you very much, Ben, for the questions. I think it's very important to say that we should work in collaboration. That's quite important that we work together, because if we work by ourselves, the result can be a bit less than if we work in coalition. And well, some of us has mentioned about the importance of collaboration. So for us as Franciscan International, we work in different fronts. Of course, we work with the Franciscan families, with the Catholic families, with the faith-based families together, just to push the decision makers, knowing that the faith-based organizations have also the voice, and not also the voice, the members. More than 60-70% of the population of the world, they are believers. They have religion, spirituality, and many of the decision makers are part of this faith-based community. So we force them, or we encourage them really to take into consideration the voice of the people. So that's one thing that we do. But at the same time, we, Franciscan International, as human rights organizations, we work in collaboration as well with many other human rights organizations. And we, for example, just a very concrete example, for this COP26, there's a common position of the Human Rights Working Group for Climate Change that encompasses different NGOs coming from different parts of the world. This position paper has been used as a negotiating document in which we try to talk to many decision making negotiators. Like, for example, today was a good example. While we were queuing 2 hours under the wind, queuing for a very long time to enter to the UNFCCC compound, we met with our brothers and sisters from Solomon Island. They are negotiators. So while we were waiting, we talk about certain issues on what do we want from this negotiation process. So we are trying to pass the messages, we are trying to influence them, to encourage them, to commend what they are doing. But at the same time, we encourage them that take into considerations the voice of the people. So that's just an example. But apart from that, the NGO coalitions also try to dispatch ourselves, having coordination every day. I think Laudato Si movement also has the network, several others network. So we are trying to enter to the negotiators, and then we come with concrete proposal. SFI, for example, Article 6 is very important. So therefore, what we are doing is trying to ensure that human rights safeguards should be included, should be guaranteed in the Paris Rulebook, and it should not be negotiated, but it has to be a must. And through the human rights champion states, we try to ensure that they are included. So that's a complete example. Thank you.
Thank you, Budi. Thank you so much. Another question we have, and I think it could go to Christopher if he's still here. One, Brian is very concerned about the intentions of our partners and is asking how do Catholics and non-Catholics alike, especially people of faith and also specifically religious orders, with their partners to ensure that these groups are not indeed wolves in sheep's clothing, and they are not using our good intentions for their ill motives. Anyone, Christopher, Brother Angel? Maybe Christopher has gone to bed. Is he here?
No,
I am here. I mean, a very quick answer, I would say part of that is, in fact, a lot of the initiatives are coming from us. We're the ones who are raising them and taking them. We're using whatever networking we can find as a way of taking our voices further, and that I'd say, yeah, we're the ones who are starting and running with the things. I don't feel we're under pressure in our particular concern, say in the Solomons. We're under pressure from others because, in fact, there's no one else trying to do these things. We're the ones who are seeing the issues and raising them. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brother Christopher. This question goes to Lindley. And you are being congratulated for the good work you've done with the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition. One is wondering how you are going to submit them, and even asking how many signatures you'll be presenting. Thank you. I think you presented that one already.
Thank you, Brother Ben. Yes, we did get over 120,000 individual signatures from all over the globe, as I mentioned. And these signatures will be presented to the UNFCCC delegates tomorrow. It will be presented as part of an interfaith petition with other Catholic faith actors, like the Christian Aid has also done a petition. So it will be an interfaith petition presented at the UNFCCC leaders tomorrow. We are also inviting state delegates who obviously the most notorious ones are the ones who have to take the best action to come and hear Catholics raise their voice for the planet.
Thank you very much, Lincoln. Yes, there's another question here, but it's quite a long question. I've got a question from Sheila. I think it's Sister Sheila. Are you planning any interventions with government leaders? I don't know who can answer that question.
Can you say it again, to meet leaders?
Are you planning any interventions with government leaders?
Dr. Ben, as we are all here in Glasgow, we will be interacting with state delegates and government leaders at the COP venue, on the streets, in the green room and also in the blue room, and we will be trying to influence them to hear what is happening within the negotiations and outside of the negotiations. So yes, as much as possible, we'll try to intervene and make sure that they hear our voices, that they hear Catholic voices. If they don't hear us, they'll see us. You can imagine all our Franciscan brothers are here, well represented. So if they don't hear us, they will definitely see us, and we'll be stopping them to find out how the negotiations are taking place. As Laudato Si movement, we are also trying to contact a couple of delegates who will be at the conference, where we've sent them emails. Some of them have responded. Actually, we have the delegation from Argentina who have responded to us. We'll be trying to meet with them. I've also contacted the delegation from South Africa and Kenya. You helped us get that. So we will be trying to negotiate and with them to see what their positions are. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's also a very good question for us, because for sure we'll try to do as much as possible. Not that the delegates will come and seek to speak with us. No, we are chasing them. We are trying to get the 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes to talk to them.
Exactly.
We are very insisting now. You know, as the Franciscans, we are not only about singing and doing all the nice things, but we are also the fighters. No? We will try to convince them. Just to give you another example, I was quite lucky. Friends International was quite lucky that in the beginning of last week, we were invited by the Interfaith Glasgow to have dialogue with the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. And I was the one who was quite lucky to get that opportunity. And then we had the dialogue, a real dialogue with the First Minister of Scotland. And I passed the same message as the message that I share with you all. And it's quite important for them to know that we are working on it, that we have the petition, that we have the demand. So we will continue to do that. And this is in collaboration with so many thousands of organizations that come here. Just a small note, while we were queuing, apart from the Solomon Island, there was also a Ghanaian negotiator who saw Clark and Angel and said, like, you're Franciscans with your habit. No? I'm also Catholic. Yeah, I know also the Franciscan. So that's the fact that you put your habit. It's also a gimmick, because people can recognize and people are interested to talk to, and they know that Franciscans are here. How many comments did we receive in the last 2 days here? Well, we are working. You're Franciscans. It can be an opening point so that we can talk to them, we can pass our message, and we can sit down and discuss about what we want from this COP26. Back to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And finally, I'll give opportunity to Thomas. There's any question from our Spanish-speaking friends or in the room before we conclude? Thomas?
Pienso que nada.
Nada. Okay. We do not have. All right. We do not have any. I'll now take this opportunity to welcome our Brother Marcus Heinz, who is the Executive Director of the Franciscans International. Give us a vote of thanks, and then we'll conclude with a prayer. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks to everyone. And before I say my words of thanks and conclude, I also want to answer to a question that Sister Sheila raised, another one, and also to apologize that we are very much men-dominated this evening in this webinar. We had our sisters with us, but it's true, Sheila, that the Franciscans were right now in this webinar represented all by men. Sorry for this, but of course, Franciscans International in general, our work, we always represent also our sisters, the whole family, as you know, and you are also part of. So again, my apologies, and you are all included, but it's always good to remind us. This morning, as every morning when I went to the office, I passed by the post office to pick up our mails that have arrived. And this morning, I found this book in the mailbox, the same that Clark just showed us. And it was sent to us by one of the co-authors, the Reverend Dr. Simon Coxedge, a member of the Third Order of the Society of St. Francis. So thanks a lot for this. And on the cover it says, this book is an inspiration and an education, not only in seeing, but also in living differently in our century that so desperately needs Franciscan wisdom, or better, I should say, Francisclarian wisdom. That is also my hope now at the end of this very inspiring webinar, that this is also an inspiration and an education for us, and not just in seeing, but really in living differently. In that sense, I thank all of you for your statements, for sharing about your work, about your life. It was really inspiring. It was great. Thanks a lot. And also to all of you that participated in this webinar.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you so much for that lot of thanks, and also apologizing for not having sisters represented in terms of speakers. But we know many of you are here. And now we've come to the conclusion of our webinar and meeting. Thank you so very much. We'll now conclude with a word of prayer, and I'll invite also at the end Brother Angel to play the song again. I see a lot of demands, people saying we would like to listen to the song again. So we'll play that song again, and while you leave in the chat, you can just put a word of gratitude or anything you have in the comments and in the chat box. Thank you so much. And now I'll invite Sister Monica to lead us in the final prayer, which Thomas, will you project that, or I do?
Can you do that?
Yeah. So welcome, Sister Monica.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. We embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Monica. At least we have a sister who prayed. That's a good thing. And so
welcome.
thank you for our panelists and everyone, those who joined us. And now we'll conclude with this prayer and leave a word in the chat as you leave. God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Of course, Ben, special thanks to our host, the OFM brothers here in Glasgow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thomas. Okay, thanks.
Niñas tan maltratadas, se escucha el